There's a lot of emotions and sensations that horror games can bring out in us. Fear is often something we associate the most with the horror genre overall, whether it be the creeping dread of fear over time or heart-racing sudden fear that comes out of nowhere. Horror can make us sad or angry or even laugh from time to time too. But what about comfort? Comfort is something we don't tend to associate with horror at all. When we think of comfort, we think of nice, warm, fuzzy things. When it comes to games, people often go for things like Stardew Valley or Slime Rancher. I'm not much different. I love those sorts of games too. I call them soft games, but they're not the only place that I find comfort. Another huge comfort to me is horror. Often, I'll find myself revisiting the same horror games over and over, immersing myself in their environments, their stories, their sounds, and finding comfort in all elements of it. Some games just hit that part of my brain just right, and they wrap it up in a nice warm blanket that tells me I'm home. One of the key things about a lot of horror is other people, or in some cases, creatures, whether they're enemies or NPCs or even playable characters. There are a lot of horror games where you are often not particularly alone. There's obviously something to be said for games where your only companion is your enemy, of course. You're alone, fighting for your life, often against creatures beyond your comprehension. There's fear in that, but not a lot of comfort. Of course, it's very hard to actually find games where you are truly alone, but I think that's okay. For me, what's important is if a game allows you to be fully alone, whether it's for a large part of the game or even just small segments. I think it would be safe to say that personally, I'm an introverted person. I don't dislike people as a whole, but I have social anxieties and my own personal reasons that mean I can't go out very often, and maybe don't get exposed to many social situations compared to a lot of other people. Because of this, it's meant that I have become very used to being by myself, and honestly, at this point in my life, I really enjoy it. What this has meant for me in the long term is that I find a lot of comfort in just being alone, taking in sounds and sights, and that in turn has transferred to my love of games and how I play them. When it comes to games, I've learnt that something that truly brings me joy is to seek out parts of those games that let me embrace being alone and taking in the atmosphere that comes from it. I think in the broadest sense, being alone is about the environment. In a lot of horror games, and plenty of non-horrors too, even if the game isn't entirely centered around being alone, there are opportunities to be alone. It's just about finding them. Some games do this better than others, and particularly I find the games that are best for this are the ones that allow you downtime without a constant enemy threat. There are a lot of fantastic horror games out there that will have you being chased by an enemy almost constantly, or be pushing the player to constantly be moving their progress forward. It's very hard to properly soak up your surroundings when you're in a constant state of movement without an opportunity to stop. I really love games that give you downtime and give you that opportunity to stop, take a look around, and embrace what's in front of you and all around you. Not all games that do this are inherently slow-paced either. It's just about giving you the time, or even just the choice, to take it slowly. In some games, there's also an element to feeling alone even whilst having other people around, whether those people are enemies, NPCs, or maybe even playable characters. A good example with playable characters is Martian Gothic Unification, where the game involves you using 3 different characters who are all separated and need to stay separated in order to stay alive. It has its own sense of loneliness as you walk and run down the long sci-fi styled hallways, feeling isolated from the other characters because despite being able to control them, you don't have the comfort of having them next to you at all times. Another example of being alone around other people is Happy's Humble Burger Barn and Burger Farm, which has this great sense of feeling alone because 90% of the people around you are the quote-unquote customers that you're serving. You get this consistent sense of loneliness that is supplemented by a growing concern about just how real your reality is. Truly, it's the games that give you the opportunity to really embrace that feeling for more than fleeting moments that I tend to find the most comfort in. When I find these moments in game, be they short or long, I will always just settle in and take it all in. In a lot of experiences for me, it can be about finding the perfect place to sit and watch the world go by, maybe in the form of fogs rolling in or the buzzing of static and lights. In some games, lonely environments can have you feeling alone because they are devoid of any life, be it human or otherwise. No One Lives Under the Lighthouse does a fantastic job of this in earlier segments of the game, where you are treated to these gorgeous, creepy moments on the island in which you feel like there's nothing but you and the seagulls. In other games, it can be about an area where you are alone, but the environment around you hints to other people who are not with you. I really like the alpha of Happy's Humble Burger Farm for its static buildings with glowing lights that give you this eerie feeling that leaves you questioning whether there really is anyone else here, or if it's a trick to fool you into believing you aren't entirely alone in this fast food hellscape. It's true for pretty much any aspect of horror games, but audio is also pretty key to finding comfort in those beautiful little slices of cozy, creepy comfort. Something I really enjoy is when a game has you driving down a long, quiet road, but you have the opportunity to put the radio on and just listen to some music. It's comforting, in the way that you would find comfort just listening to music on a daily drive, but with the ambience of the world around you, especially when the world around you is not quite right. It doesn't just stop at music, because one of the comfiest parts of a horror game can be more specifically sounds. It could be the sound of your character's footsteps as they walk around, the buzzing of lights, the howl of the wind as you explore around you. Every little noise, when carefully crafted, can come together to create a touch of tantalizing terror in the coziest way. I really like it when I play games that have a good focus on the sound effects, just as much as the music, because for me, I can find sound effects particularly soothing, and also just as memorable too. Another element to the comfort of being alone is that sense of familiarity that comes from knowing what it's like to be alone yourself, for better or for worse. Just because I have the capability of enjoying my own company doesn't mean I don't have the capacity to feel genuinely lonely at times. I think there's something to be said about finding comfort in a shared experience, in feeling familiar with a sensation, and empathetic towards those in a similar emotional situation, even if the situation that generates those emotions are strange and unusual, as is often the case with horror games and their character stories. In the sub-story, Born from a Wish, from Silent Hill 2. You play as Maria, prior to meeting James in the main story. Something that's really prominent about this side story in how it differs from the main game is just how much emptier Maria's world feels. James's story is led by wanting to find his wife, and by meeting a number of other people, Maria included, in Silent Hill, whilst navigating around strange, grotesque creatures. James is, more often than not, always accompanied in some manner, even for parts of the game having Maria as a companion alongside him. For Maria, Silent Hill is emptier. She only meets one other person who she doesn't meet face to face at all, and is just a voice behind a door.
Open up! Hello?
Stop it. You're disturbing me.
Thank God. I finally found somebody. Can you open the door?
No.
But why?
She is alone in the world, and alone in this scenario, and her environment reflects that. When you walk around the world as Maria, there's just something about it that feels emptier, quieter, than the world you experience as James. Maria's genuine sense of loneliness from the second her existence comes into play brings me this sweet, sad comfort. I'm sure many people empathize with her mindset, especially throughout this short story, of trying to find meaning and direction when being thrown into a world you never asked to be a part of. Maria speaks to us, and it's in that connection that we can also find comfort. I think at the end of the day, the comfort in being alone is always the comfiest when you are alone. And if you're someone who experiences that quite deeply, then you're probably also able to find comfort in stranger places than most, like horror games. I'm also pretty sure, even in my knowledge and experience of horror games, I've only scratched the surface of how many games there are that can give me that sensation of comfort. Thanks very much for watching, and if you have a horror game that brings you comfort for any reason, let me know. I'd love to check it out.